Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AWS Marketplace Series from theCUBE. My name is Christophe, Bertrand. I'm a principal analyst here at theCUBE Research, and I'm very happy to welcome Catherine Johnson, who is the Vice President of Global Solutions Engineering at Hydrolix. Catherine, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk a little bit about yourself, and then tell us more about Hydrolix. What do you do? And maybe put this in the context of your partnership with AWS.
Yeah, so I run our global solutions engineering team. And so what that means is folks on my team work with customers to understand how our solution fits into their architecture, how they can best leverage it, making sure that they're getting the most out of it and seeing value out of the solution. So we're there to make sure that we've got the right fit from a product perspective with what a customer is trying to solve, and then ensure that they have continued success after they've become a customer.
So we'll talk about the solution in more detail in the next few minutes, and also about the onboarding a little later. We'll get to see the solution in action as well. But could you tell us more about the type of integrations that you have in place at this point, and with specifically which AWS services, and maybe set up for us the general context in this world of agentic AI. What can you do? How can you help?
Yeah, so Hydrolix we've been around since about 2019. Actually, we started in 2018. And the premise behind the company from the beginning was very much about dealing with massive amounts of data. So we're talking hundreds of terabytes, petabytes per day. So a lot of our initial use cases came from the CDN world, where there's lots and lots of data coming through at any given point, especially if you're talking about streaming media, right? So some of our use cases involve large streaming events, and so we're getting petabytes of data a day in total from those types of events. So if you fast forward that a little bit, when you're talking about AI and how you can extract information out of data, how you can build models, it's actually really important to have all the data. If a lot of companies, when you start to get to that scale or sampling, and like if we're talking about CDN data, some folks will say, well, we're going to sample all the successful requests and then we'll pull in all of the errors. And that's fine, but what you're doing is you're missing like the full scope of like what did all of the traffic look like, even the successes, so that you can find patterns, potentially things that you wouldn't necessarily recognize as a problem in the data. So when it comes to agentic AI, what we really are is a way to store all of that data so that you can ask it questions in natural language ways to get answers across the full data set, not just parts of it, right? So you really get a full picture of what's happening.
Right, and I want to just remind our viewers, we're talking here petabyte scale. Now, obviously, fast forward to today with agentic AI. Well, for me, it's pretty obvious. You can see how you've essentially built a solution that also allows for agents to quickly get the information they need across a lot of data and a lot of sources, which are fully integrated. So could you walk us through the agentic AI use case? Because I think that's definitely something that right now is a hot topic for many people.
Yeah, for sure. So part of that scale is that we can query it really quickly as well. The way that we've architected the solution sits in object storage. However, we can get sub-second latency on queries that are going out to the system and looking at tons and tons of data. So when we start getting into agentic AI, what we've really done is we've set up different skills and different agents that know how to go and look at data that we've held either around like quality of experience for video streaming, lots of different data feeds that are coming in. But the goal there is that we're looking at all the data, like I was saying before, but we can pull it back really quickly. So you're not doing a query against, petabytes of data and you're waiting for, minutes, potentially like up to an hour for it. The goal is that we're getting information back really quickly. So if you're trying to do something like root cause analysis in real time, you go through the agent, you can ask questions, but you're getting all of those answers back very quickly so that you can then act and improve, like if we're talking about streaming, your overall customer experience. You want to get ahead of those things before your customers start seeing them. So that's typically what we're doing in those cases is we're looking for problems and that we're seeing live as they're coming in. It doesn't just have to be for streaming. It can be for anything where you have like large amounts of data, especially when you're worried about customer experience. And so with AWS, what our initial integrations have really been around the media space. So CDN, a lot of the elemental services, WAF, where we can bring all of that data in together into one place. We typically do it by having it all in a data set. So you can look at all of the data in like a single stream and get answers back really quickly. So our customers are doing things like if there's a DDoS attack, because of how we're built, we can actually pull in all of that data. We don't get overwhelmed by it. We scale very, very quickly. So you get all of those logs that are coming in for a DDoS attack, and you can very quickly understand, is there an IP address? Is there a particular country this is coming from? What do I need to shut down? Or the opposite, where maybe you set up rules that are blocking certain viewers or customers, and that wasn't intentional. So you can see very quickly, like, wait a second, we have no customers or viewers coming from this particular geo, and then you can go back and make the changes on your end very quickly. But it's really focused on what is your customer experiencing, and like how do you get ahead of that really quickly. So again, a lot of it's around customer experience, either because like we want to make sure that the media is being served really quickly, or preventing something like a DDoS attack or getting in front of it very quickly so it doesn't impact customer experience.
Right. So this is very interesting because obviously the use case is here optimization on the streaming side of things, but more importantly for me, it's really what you do, which is that millisecond, real time analysis. Love the cyber resilience angle as well, and of course it combines with the use case you mentioned around media and entertainment, and of course there are other verticals that you serve. But there is one customer example that I think maybe we could talk about, and then we'll go into a demo. Can you talk to us about NVIDIA? Because I think you've done some pretty cool stuff for them.
Yeah, so they're a customer that we have that had started with CDN logs and security types of data. So they were bringing all of that in, and they had an incident. And what was really cool about it was, so before we had introduced the agentic piece of it, a user would go in, they might look at dashboards, which we'll see in the demo. Then they would do some queries. They might like click around in the dashboard to find, like look for spikes or something like that. But when we're talking, hundreds of terabytes and petabyte scale, that like, how do you view that on a line, right? Like, how do you pull up a graph to show that? And then how do you know which SQL query or which fields you want to go look at? So what NVIDIA was able to do with our MCP server was very quickly use natural language querying effectively to go ask our data set for answers about what's going on, what's happening right now, and then get an answer back so they could then mitigate the problem very, very quickly. So it wasn't in that case even just about how fast we can return the data. It was the fact that we have that ability to do natural language query so that they don't have to figure out like, okay, well, what's the SQL statement and debug the SQL statement, right? Like it doesn't matter how expert you are, you still have to make sure like, did I choose the right field? There's a lot of, you hardly ever get it right the first time unless you're writing something really simple. So that natural language query part of it is really what brought the speed to that use case.
Right. And what we're talking about is the difference between what I think was like 12 hours versus like 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely a big, big improvement. And of course, now you're talking about the ability to really troubleshoot at scale, very, very, very large environments from multiple places in the AWS data sphere, for lack of a better term. Well, Catherine, let's take a look at the solution. We have a little demo here. So if we could bring it up, walk us through what the experience is for the end user.
Yeah, so this is an example. We used some of the AWS examples. We built an agent using the Stram framework that plugs into Bedrock. So we took this as a starting point. And then we went ahead and built an architecture where Hydrolix is sitting at the back end. You see it over there on the right. So it's all the components that we had there before, and we deployed MCP in a Lambda in this case. This framework is talking to a Lambda that only runs when it's actually being used, and that Lambda understands the data sets that are sitting inside of Hydrolix and can query across all of those to get answers. So in this case, I believe it was CDN logs, some WAF logs, and some ad insertion data. So the user can then, or what we've really done is we've written agents that understand a lot of these different use cases. So, like I was mentioning before, quality of experience. If someone's running multiple CDNs and they want to look across all of those data sets, that's what those are the types of things where the system will go and ask questions. So, what we used to do, or like I was saying before, what anyone used to do is you would really go, you might have a dashboard set up, you might have some alerts set up as well. And if you get an alert, you would go to a dashboard and then start looking. So instead, now we have these agents that are on the screen, and there will be more that are added to that over time. And this is an example of a dashboard. So you can come the way that the data looks in the dashboard, you can filter on anything. But again, if you don't know exactly where the problem's coming from, there's, potentially hundreds of fields in here to try to understand, like, what's the thing that is not behaving as expected. So instead, we go into this conversational interface. And so we can ask questions and say things like, I'm a uh, user of a multi CDN. I have an event coming up. I want to see what are the things I need to optimize. We can plug in any of the models that are available. So you can use anything that is your preference here. So the Opus model, Sonnet, any of those. Um, and we plugged in the ability to do graphs in here as well. So you can ask a question, get an answer back, and then also have it do like a very contextual visualization for you. So here, like you can see it goes in, it looks at what tables are available, it looks at what fields are available based on what question you're asking. It will come back with an answer. And then it will show, if you ask for a visualization, it'll show a visualization of that. So rather than looking at a sort of all encompassing dashboard, the goal here is that the visualization that we're giving you is rooted in the context of what you're trying to answer. But in this case, we're looking for any points of presence, what were the specific places where the errors might have been happening. It's basically, it's to give the user as much context as possible for specifically what they're trying to ask, instead of them trying to find the data as they're going and trying to understand what fields should be mapped into that data. So yeah, here's the visualization. And again, like that's not a generic, here's your dashboard. It's based in the context of the question that the user is trying to answer. And there'll be more of this. So, and these are past conversations that have been had. So you can see a few different types of visualizations here. And again, it's very much, answering the exact question that's being asked versus being a generic graph. And here, like, it's just basically creating a table for you. But again, like the user's not having to ask for that. It's going ahead and generating all of that for you. And in this case, these are all AWS services where the data is coming from. So I believe this one has CDN, media tailor, and some information about ad insertion as well.
This is very interesting because you're doing this at scale. We're talking about petabytes of data. I know you have some compression technology as well that comes into play to help with some of the retention components of this bigger equation. Let's talk about onboarding. I'm an end user. Do I need professional services? How quickly can I start playing with Hydrolix?
Yeah, so we're integrated with the AWS Marketplace. So you can go into the marketplace and find our solution. When you go in and you activate it, we'll ask several questions about the types of AWS sources that you want to use. So the ones that we support today are all listed there. It will give you instructions about what you need to enable on those services. So, for example, if you want to bring in CDN logs, there'll be a logging configuration that you'll need to use because you can choose a variety of ways to do that with CloudFront. Wow, the name escaped me there for a second. So you can we tell you what logging configuration to use. You set all of that up and it's deployed for you. It's collecting information right away. So at that point, what we'll typically do, or the customer can do, is validate, yes, that's the data I wanted to see. That's the data that it looks correct. If we're talking about CloudFront, like it's the right distribution that I wanted to show, because you might have several. So there's a validation step. And then from there, we're introducing more sort of agentic stuff into our product, where we're looking at what are the fields that are coming in and how they're being used to decide how to optimize things for you. So if we start seeing new fields coming in, we'll bubble those up and see if those are things that you want to index so you can search them really quickly. And then we're also getting to the point as well where we can help you with optimizing queries from a more AI type of perspective. Like, hey, we notice you're doing this a lot. Like there's an optimization you could do either by, we have the concept of summary tables that don't lose fidelity of the data when you're actually summarizing it, depending on how you're doing it. So we can make those types of recommendations as well. You can engage professional services if there's really specific stuff that you want to do, but it's not necessarily the path to be successful with the product. We do engage our professional services team for more complex use cases or things that are like massive, massive volume, because just very simply put, looking at data at scale is very different than, being able, like if where you're used to doing regular expressions, when you're talking about hundreds of terabytes of data, that's like computationally very intensive. So when somebody wants to do those types of things, they can do them themselves, but they can also engage our professional services to decide, like, here's how we might index that to make sure that you're always getting that sub-second response time.
Right, and obviously the example we heard about earlier, minutes versus hours, and that was just one example. I think speaks for itself, and the power of how you're leveraging AI and agentic AI in your own solution. Look, this was a great conversation, Catherine. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you for joining us. My name is Christophe Bertrand, Principal Analyst here at theCUBE.